In 1972, Fort Siloso became a historical site when the government of Singapore decided to develop Balakan Mata, which was renamed as Sentosa, Island of Tranquility, for recreational purposes.
Elsewhere on Sentosa, most of Fort Connaught has been demolished, with a collarium and later a golf course being built on the site. The collarium itself has vanished and the site has been extended by land reclamation, which has taken in a nearby small island, the area now being called Sentosa Cove.
Fort Siloso was built on this western end of Sentosa in 1879, and it is one of the 3 forts that was built on this island by the British Army. The purpose of all these forts was to protect the Singapore harbour against enemy invasion by sea. Now this stretch of sea along our right is the western entrance for ships going into the Singapore harbour. By the 1900s, after the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869, the Singapore harbour had flourished into a busy trading centre, and ships from different countries going to and leaving the harbour had to pass by here. So due to their importance, Fort Siloso was built to protect this western entrance. Also an interesting fact is that in the early days, before the arrival of the British, the Chinese traders also travelled along the sea passageway in their sailing boats. However, they find this stretch of sea very dangerous because of a tall rock that stood in the middle of the sea and had obstructed their path. They called it the Dragon's Teeth Gate because of its shape, but it was later blown away by the British to make the seaway safer.
So what is Fort Siloso?
Fort Siloso is the only place where the coastal line is being erected. Siloso comes from the word Siloso, a Filipino word meaning jealous person. The fort is situated on the resort island of Sentosa, installed as a museum and open for public worship. The yellow zone here is more about a soldier's life. The red zone is about the prisoner of war experience, and the blue zone is an underground tunnel.
April 1907, the 9.2-inch BL gun was listed for removal as for the 6-inch QS. It would seem that the 2 12 rounders were removed sometime during 1907, as well as they do not appear in the list of mounted armament for 1908, being replaced by 2 medium machine guns as armament mounted. In the 1908 list, the 9.2-inch and the 6-inch guns were still shown as being mounted, but listed for removal. In April 1909, the approved armament list does not mention the 9.2-inch BL gun, therefore it must be removed by then. The 6-inch QS was still mounted and remained so according to the 1910 and 1911 lists. They were still, however, listed for removal.
From the 1920s, Japan had begun to emerge as a serious threat to British outposts in the Far East. With drastic cuts in their defense budget after World War I, the British could no longer maintain a strong permanent naval presence in the area. British therefore decided to implement the main fleet to Singapore strategy to defend not only Singapore but the rest of her empire in the Far East.
By 1939, the main defences of Singapore consisted of a series of 12 coastal artillery batteries. Contrary to popular belief, the guns except 2 were made to fire both landward and seaward. Certain that the Japanese would at first attack from the sea, the British defence planners were confident that the main fleet and reinforcements would arrive in Singapore well before any landward attack. It was, however, a disastrous mistake as the Japanese later invaded from the north during the Battle of Singapore.
Some trivia. Fort Siloso remained a prisoner of war camp until the end of the war, housing both military personnel and civilians, following the Japanese surrender in 1945.
What lessons can we learn from the events that happened here? We learned that it is important to always be prepared and make sure we have enough resources to protect ourselves and our country from invasions. Also, we learn not to be overconfident as enemy may easily have much more advanced weaponry and may overpower us in terms of manpower. This would result in losing both country and people of Singapore. Therefore, we must be prepared and have all the ammunition needed to survive the war.
Why is there a bomb shelter?
The simple answer to the question is protection from enemy fire. Over the centuries, defences range from earthworks, timber palisades, wooden forts, castles and citadels. etc.
On the disbandment of the coastal artillery by the British Army in May 1956, the guns were sold to the local scrap dealers. Gurkha detachments manned the fort until its return to the Singapore authorities in 1967.
These 120mm.45 caliber Japanese naval guns were discovered in 1979 near Upper Pierce Reservoir in Singapore. Manufactured in Kerr Arsenal in 1944, the guns are believed to be part of the overall Japanese defense against the expected invasion of Singapore by the Allies in 1945. Their mounts were designed so that the guns could be used as a conventional artillery or anti-aircraft weapons. They were mounted here in 1981.
Oh, the music.
What does this site help remind the future generations about?
This site reminds the future generation that we should appreciate the peace we currently have and should not take it for granted. It also tells us a lot about how the British fought against the Japanese and how we lost due to overconfidence, as the British were certain that they would attack from the sea and did not give any attention to other weaker areas of Singapore.
Why do we need sites like this? These sites are important as they remind our future generations about the hardship our ancestors have gone through to let us have a peaceful Singapore, and that we should always be prepared, as they were. From another point of view, having a better fort is important as it would mean a stronger defense against enemies and invaders, which would mean that Singapore would be able to put up a strong resistance against any opposing nation, so that opposing nations' soldiers' morale would be lost, therefore increasing our chances of winning.